And from the, as the world now knows, like so far, Tibet has always been very silent. And the last protests that took place on a mass scale were in late 1980s, to be precise, 87, 88, 89, and early 1991 and 2. After that, the Chinese have been clamping down upon the Tibetans, and there was no protest to take place at all, because the tyranny was so bad that nobody dared to speak out. Anyone who was speaking out would be thrown into the jail for about 10 to 12 to 15 to life imprisonment, so nobody dared to speak out. But because of this deep resentment over which has been created by the Chinese authorities in Tibet over decades now the Tibetan people are again coming onto the street and showing their protest. As you know now, since the 10th March, which is the Tibetan Uprising Day, monks in hundreds, in thousands have come onto the street, beginning from Lhasa, where the monks of the three great monasteries have come to the streets and protested against the Chinese authorities in Tibet. And the monks were thrown back into their monasteries, and the monasteries sealed. Thereafter, ordinary people, joined by the smaller monasteries and monasteries, they also came into the street. And when the protests in Lhasa, they were being brutally crushed, and the security forces, they were going like house to house, raids to pick up all the suspected protesters. Basically, they were picking up all the young men in the families. We have been receiving testimonies of crying mothers and elderlies in the families saying that their young sons are being dragged away, beaten by the security forces. We don't know how many have been carried away right now, but we are estimating anywhere around 600 plus. And according to information that we have been receiving so far, the protests have spread like a wildfire in the whole of Tibet now. Say, for in northeastern Tibet, in various parts in northeastern Tibet, what the Tibetans traditionally know as Amdo region, there are protests, mass-scale protests taking place everywhere. When I say mass-scale, it's about 5,000 plus Tibetans coming onto the streets and protesting against the Chinese rule in Tibet. As of yesterday, we have been receiving pictures of the Chinese police shooting indiscriminately into the protesters, and as a result, at least 15 dead bodies have been brought into a local monastery, and people fear that about 30 plus have already been killed. And this morning also...
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Hello. This morning also we have been receiving information that there are protests still going on in various parts of Tibet, especially in the northeastern Tibet region. There are now the students protesting coming out. The students have been peaceful protesting, and even for them, like middle school students, they have about 40 have been rounded off and taken to the police station. You have university students also protesting, and right now, about 2 hours ago, Tibetan students in the Chinese capital, Beijing, they are also staging a solidarity protest there.
At incredible peril, we know what happened in Tiananmen Square. Again, we're talking to the director of the Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy, the main organization politically fighting for the Tibetan people. The genocide is ongoing against your fine people, and it's so sad to see this. Even most Chinese don't like what their government has been doing to you. But they've been bringing in historical subgroups and rivals that have lived near you to usurp and take you over. I want to be clear here. AP, Reuters, and others are reporting 80 plus dead, but you sounded like you're saying it's around 50 or so?
Yes. From whatever we could confirm at the moment, according to our confirmed information that we have been able to document at the moment, we are counting the death toll as 55 absolutely confirmed.
Okay, but I would imagine the international press is probably maybe one step ahead of you, though you have a lot of sources inside Tibet. How are you, we've seen the cell phone camera videos, we've seen a few of those getting out, we're seeing less and less of those. How are you still able to get information out of Tibet?
Well, actually, it's through the marvels of technology nowadays that we have been able to receive information. No matter how strict the authorities tend to be, there is always a bravery element and some brain element. And it is a combination of these. Like the people inside Tibet, they also know that the risk that they are taking, and we also know that what sort of risk that they are taking But despite the risk, as we already know, like China does not tolerate any kind of reporting to the outside world. But these are like now like the last resort shout to the outside world, like putting themselves on risk.
Absolutely. So you're saying it's part courage, part brain power, part ingenuity, part brain power, part muscle power. Now, what do you expect the communist Chinese oppressors to do now? Do you believe that there were these spontaneous demonstrations because the people knew in Tibet that the Olympics were coming and that this was your chance to bring attention to the genocide that's going on? Or why did all of this start?
Well, exactly. Like, as I said before, there's a deep-seated resentment by the Tibetan people against the authorities. And nobody has been able to speak up in the last, at least 2 decades when the last big protest happened. So for 2 decades, the Tibetans have been suppressing their sentiments, despite the tight clampdown by the authorities. And with now the Olympics coming on, the spotlight being on Beijing, and of course, Tibetans in exile also marching back into Tibet, it's an inspiration and it's an opportunity that it's an opportunity to perfectly highlight the Tibetan cause to the outside world.
Well, how cowardly is it for the Chinese military to shoot to shoot people in the streets who are there, in many cases, peacefully demonstrating, and then after they start shooting them is what we've seen, then they start burning things. I mean, how cowardly is it for the Chinese military to shoot unarmed civilians? They're also doing it all over China. China itself is having more and more resistance. So can you speak of the cowardliness of shooting at unarmed people, but also it's not just a rebellion against tyranny in Tibet. The rebellion is intensifying in Chinese held areas across the Chinese mainland.
Exactly. The use of arms and ammunition by the paramilitary troops, by the various Chinese security forces, it does not show their might, it does not show their guns, it does not show their latest guns, it just shows how weak that they are deep within, in order to use that brand new gun on an innocent Tibetan, peacefully shouting for his rights, peacefully participating in a demonstration, peacefully holding a candle light and asking...
Stay there, sir, stay there. The Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy Director. Final segment, straight ahead with you.